rugged hills of North Wales have long been popular with mountaineers. Ever since the first cragsmen began tracing routes on virgin rock, generations of climbers have been drawn to Snowdonia to perfect and evolve their art. Yorkshireman Ron Fawcett is unquestionably one of the finest rock climbers active today. In a sense, he too is a pioneer, for not only is he discovering new and more difficult lines, but is applying new thinking and a new athleticism to older routes. A long line of grey cliffs above Tremadog offers many fine routes. Ron is here soloing Vector, which is acknowledged to be one of the great classic British rock climbs. It was first climbed in 1960 by the legendary Joe Brown.
10 or 15 years ago, Vector was one of the hardest routes in the country. But now, standards have risen so much, there are climbs 4 or 5 grades harder than Vector. I climb those standards, so Vector is well within my soloing capabilities.
Vector is an elegant route, requiring the climber to make a variety of gymnastic moves as he picks his way across a series of overlapping slabs and flakes. Ron makes it look deceptively easy, even though it is continually steep and in many places overhanging. In climbers' jargon, it's what is known as an extreme. Stylish and popular, Vector is a must for all aspiring hardmen. It was here in North Wales that rock climbing began 100 years ago, when 2 young men managed to scale the steep cliffs of Llwyd. They had been attracted by the sheer challenge of the great sweep of rock, and were not merely looking for a way to the summit, which had been the object of mountaineering until then. Today, Snowdonia's many crags are crisscrossed by a network of well-documented routes. Waiting for Ron at the top of the rocks is Welsh climber Eric Jones, whose home is in Tremadog.
Well done, Ron.
Oh, cheers, thanks.
How long did it take you?
Oh, not so long, about 6 or 7 minutes, I think.
Fantastic. You fancy a brew?
I could do with a brew after that,
Right, let's go.
Rightio then.
Close by, on the same buttress as Vector, is one of Ron's prize new routes, Strawberries.
Obviously, hundreds of climbers had looked at this particular line, and I just had to get in there and get it done. And when I eventually did it, I decided that it was definitely one of the hardest climbs that I'd ever done. Yeah, the thing is, because the climb doesn't get many people doing it or attempting it, there are lots of bits of lichen, little plants and what have you, growing on the holds. And on a route this hard, you just want everything going for you. So, just coming down, having a look to make sure that there isn't too much lichen, and if there is, brush it off with this here wire brush. Good nut spot there, good nut placement. Might have to stop a big fall, that one, because there isn't too much above there. So once I get that thing in, it's just a case of going for it, hopefully.
Managing Ron's ropes for his Strawberries climb is his wife Jill. The modern trend for clean climbing resists the use of artificial aid, favouring instead the climber's own skill and effort. Ropes, when used, are not for assistance, but to safeguard a fall. The same is true of the slings and chocks the climber carries on his harness. He climbs using a double rope, putting in protective runners as he goes.
Great. get another one and it's ever so greasy, you know. Not whether that'll stay in actually. Right. Try to get a bit of a higher one in, then I'll have a good rest, okay? Jill? Yeah. Okay. Saturate this heat. Really? Well, I think the top climbers have reached the peak in technical ability. I think they can do the very, very hard moves and they're not going to get any better at doing those moves. It's just that the climbers are going to get stronger and fitter and be able to string together lots more of these moves. So they're going to be able to do longer, harder climbs. And also equipment comes into it too. For example, Joe Brown in his era used to climb on gear that wouldn't withstand falls. A second of his had a bad accident when a rope snapped. But today I can take lots of falls on my gear and know that it's going to withstand big shock loads. It's not going to break. Oh, it's greasing off. It's brilliant jams. Just... That one. Get in there.
Yeah, I'm watching you, don't worry.
Right then.
Okay.
Watch it, yeah, watch it.
Yeah. Let me know when you're above.
Where he's going. Right.
Well done.
Oh. I got the blue it is. No, don't pull me.
No, sorry, okay, blue, yes, go for blue.
No, it's coming off. Yo-yoing is when you fall off onto a runner and then lower down to a resting place. It can either be down to the stance or to a resting place where you can rest without using your hands on a foot ledge or something like that. Obviously it's better to do the climb in one push, right from the bottom to the top, without falling off or without resting on your equipment. But the climbs that are being done now are so hard, it just isn't possible to do that. And the only other alternative is to hang on equipment, and that's totally cheating.
What's that one like you just put in?
Brilliant.
Oh, good.
Going in the mountain.
What is it?
I mean, if I could have clipped it, I'd been sound as a trout. Keep going. Right, I just have to go
I'm going
slow.
to stop.
Right, stop.
I hate that. It's awful.
One move. Just. Well, you know the sound.
If you come down again.
Oh. obviously you've fallen off because you're incredibly tired, and you lower off, and you're never going to recover 100% fitness. So when you're climbing back up again, you've got to do the whole of the pitch again to get to your high point. So you're obviously, by the time you get there, you're going to be tired again. So it is a slight taint, lowering off on equipment and then leaving your ropes and gear in situ. But there's no other way, really, of getting round it. It would be superb to go to a climb like Strawberries. You know, it's my ultimate ambition to go to it and climb it straight away from the bottom to the top with no falls, no yo-yos or anything. But at the moment, I can't do it. One day maybe I will be able to do it, but just got to wait and see. Okay, above orange.
Okay, love.
Watch us on blue, love.
Yeah.
Please. Go on, Mitch. Blue's still above. All right.
Yeah.
Just watch me, love.
Yeah.
Orange is above. Bit of slack.
Okay, love, you got it. Go for it.
I'm going. I'm for it.
Good, good. Great stuff. That's it.
Totally gone now.
Well, keep going.
Come on.
That's it, lovely. You're all right. Keep going, that's it. Well done.
I'm there, Jill. Yeah, I'm more or less safe now. Whew. Yeah, okay. God, my arms are absolutely shattered. Absolutely pumped.
That's great.
When I did the first ascent of Strawberries, it was considered to be the hardest climb in the country. And I gave it a grade of 7A, which was a new grade for that time. And in the last 18 months, it's only been repeated once. But recently, I free climbed an old peg route in the Peak District in Derbyshire, which is called the Prow. And that has a grade of 7A stroke 7B. It's 3 pitches long, whereas Strawberries is only 1 pitch. Well, the start's quite unique in that you have to step off a tree, and the tree's very springy, and you have to get it swinging so you can actually get across onto the rock. And then after that, there's quite a long traverse of about 30 feet, which is quite hard to start, and that leads you onto the wall, the main wall of the first pitch, which is very, very delicate on tiny little finger holds. From the side, it looks easy angle, but in actual fact, it's overhanging. And then after that, there's another strenuous traverse of about 20 feet to a hanging stance, the first belay point. Rocks around a bit, this thing. Whichever you want me to put in, really. Clip this bolt for her. What?
Jill's job is to see that Ron's ropes are kept snag-free and reasonably taut, so that she can hold him should he fall. but not to the extent of causing any pull which could upset his delicate balance.
Right.
The prow, being a 3-pitch climb, means she will have to follow up behind him as he completes each pitch.
Let this tree swinging a bit. Surely is.
It's twisting a bit.
Okay. It's fine now.
Okay. You got it.
The rock may appear vertical here, but is in fact gently overhanging.
Blue rock. It's all right.
To climb to this standard requires absolute physical fitness. Ron keeps himself in condition by serious training, working out in the gym and exercising regularly. But the best training for climbing is, of course, to climb. Every day, and not just at weekends. Even on his wedding day, Ron was out on high tour, soloing a few hard routes before going on to the church.
It's incredibly loose, that, Jill. Yeah.
Before Ron can start his second pitch, Jill has to take up her new stance higher on the rock face.
From there, the route moves back left onto an overhanging prow, which is climbed by very strenuous laybacking on sort of calcite fins, and that leads you to a big jug above an enormous overhang. It's possible to sort of hang off one arm and rest, if you can call that a rest. From there, you traverse left with no great difficulty, really, onto the top stance. And the top pitch, which is about 50 feet in total, is all very hard, and it's all overhanging. So, as you can imagine, it's an incredibly strenuous and sustained pitch.
The old prow route, when it was first climbed in the early 60s, had called for techniques which could best be described as rock engineering, involving the use of a large number of pitons and expansion bolts. In those days, climbs of this degree of verticality were rarely, if ever, attempted without such artificial aids. Indeed, aid was so far accepted as the norm that one hardly ever saw a rock climber on any of the great limestone crags of Yorkshire and Derbyshire without his peg hammer and a selection of pitons. What it meant was that given a limitless supply of equipment and time, there was no rock outcrop anywhere up which a route could not be forced. Regardless of its natural features, no cliff was impossible. But today's climbers are unwilling to employ the same tactics, and many of the old artificial or peg routes are, like prow, now being climbed free.
Got it. Oh. It's all right, Jill, I'm okay. Yeah. Just, I can't move, you know. That's better. Oh. 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 I am. There's any grips. Okay, Jill, I'm on the stance now. Oh, my arms. It looks incredible from here. Really spectacular. You're doing a good job. Right. Watch me on that one.
Let me know when you're above it.
Oh, safe. Just having a bit of trouble here. Keep orange. Oh. Oh. Damn it, I've lost my foothold. Sorry, Jill. Oh. Ooh.
No? How could I pull you up?
I'm above.
Sorry.
It's tangled really badly. Got it. Get in there.
Slack out.
Okay, Jill. I've cracked it. I'm safe now.
Great!
Time and again throughout the history of rock climbing, one sees how a fresh wave of activists can give the sport new direction and impetus. Trends and techniques can change dramatically within the space of a decade. Prow may be the hardest rock route in Britain today, but one can be fairly certain that in its turn, it too will become a regularly repeated classic. And newer, harder lines will be attempted by the sport's masters.
Well, the lovely thing about the Prow is there's a direct start still to go. It's going to be harder than anything else on the existing route. And it's a must, you know. I'll probably spend some time working on that when I've got time. As for anything else, things keep coming up, you know. You go to new areas and you see new lines. It's just hard to quantify what is going to be next, but something will turn up, that's for sure. Things always do. I've definitely got my eye on quite a few new lines, but I'm not going to tell you where they are.
What you're about to see here are clips taken from the many films in our library. Our intention is to show just enough of each film to give you an idea of its content and style. So So sit back and relax and let Gravity Sports Films take you to the far corners of experience.
In recent years, a revolution has been taking place in winter mountaineering. Where once alpine climbers would pick their way to the summit over snow slopes and rock pitches, avoiding steep ice wherever possible, now they're peering into gullies and crevices to search out difficult stretches of ice, and in the process have discovered the steep, brittle, short-lived ice of frozen waterfalls, poised in mid-flight.
Oh, it's not bad, this. It's a bit warm.
Two British climbers, Ron Fawcett and Eric Jones, are in Switzerland to attempt to climb one such frozen waterfall, a 500-foot cascade of blue-green ice in a valley near Candlestick. The constant melting and refreezing each day will normally compact alpine ice and make it very tough. But with frozen waterfalls, all the forces of nature and gravity are at work to get them on the move again, and the slightest melt could bring them down. They can only be safely attempted when you feel sure a period of cold weather will keep them frozen long enough for the climb to be made.
It's wrong. It's pretty impressive, eh?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Very steep, this bit.
First pitch, then the second pitch. Not so steep.
Yeah, it lies back a bit.
And then that last one looks frightening. Where do you reckon you're going to start? Just across to here,
Yeah, I'll step up on here and then get into that slim groove.
And get a screw up.
Right,
Yeah.
without a doubt, yeah.
Ron Fawcett is one of Britain's leading rock climbers. He's had less experience on ice, but his extraordinary strength and fitness give him the endurance needed for a climb like this.
Not nice at all. Wait a some of this stuff.
Those first few moves give Ron a clue to the state of the ice and the difficulties that lie ahead. Eric looks after the rope for him as he climbs.
Just worry about yourself.
It's terrible, this.
Don't worry about me. I'll hide. I'll be like an ice cream wafer, that.
The traditional way of climbing ice was to cut a line of steps with the axe big enough to stand in, then flatfoot your way up. It was long and laborious, and restricted to relatively easy angled slopes.
How you doing, Ron?
Very, very brittle.
Yeah,
Weird stuff.
Looks it.
With today's curved axes and front-pointed crampons, it's possible to maintain a hold on vertical or even overhanging ice.
This rope's really icy.
Well bedded in, the downward-pointing axe heads easily take the climber's whole weight, and by kicking in the front points of his crampons, he can tiptoe his way up the steepest ice.
Okay. Oh, Christ, go in. Go in. All the way. Oh, Christ, it's got that bloody easy, this one. It's like an orange, Eric.
You can't be all that far now.
No, just watch your head, there's a few lumps here.
Just watch the ice is spinning as you get on the ledge, Ron.
Yeah? That's what I was after. Yeah, the ice screw's about 6 foot long. Pardon?
Crack there's it.
Yeah, good crack, I think. I'll see if I can get across to the left into to that rocky corner. Looks a bit dicey getting across there, but...
Yeah.
After a run out of about 100 feet, Ron looks for somewhere to make his first belay.
They're not right good for chipping holes in rock, these two.
If he can find a crack for a rock piton, it will give him a much safer anchorage than anything that can be put into ice.
Wow. This is a bit airy. Just watch it on the ropes, Eric, yeah?
Okay, got your own.
Ooh. Jesus, swept. Whoa, watch this, Eric.
How about chopping these blocks into smaller bits?
If I can get something good on here, we'll be able to traverse back onto the ice.
Right, that's good.
Don't want to kick this stuff too hard or this big blob will come off.
You look like the flame on top of a candle.
Yeah. Oh, I better not tell you what I feel like.
Safely settled, Ron takes in the slack rope so that Eric Jones can start to climb.
Okay, is that you, Eric? Okay.
He comes from North Wales and has been climbing for 20 years.
Okay. Okay, Eric. Right.
He has a long, successful alpine record, which includes a number of fine solo ascents. 2 years ago, he became the first British climber to solo the north wall of the Eiger.
Get in.
the runner on the brown rope would be nice and well above you.
I mean the other one there.
Yeah. Okay. That's it, great. The trouble is, Eric, we've got to traverse back onto it.
Yeah.
You can hook that tool through the crab.
Hey?
Hook that left tool through that crab.
Do something, I think.
Whoa. That's it. It's okay, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a nice feeling.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, even though I'm perfectly safe coming up, you know, it's gripping.
How's it going?
Dicey.
Not very nice leaving that hole.
No. I think I might go down onto the bottom there.
Yeah, onto that boss.
Yeah, onto the boss.
Reach across from that purple, maybe.
Stretch, I think.
You can get a tool over the top of that, actually.
We'll have a go.
Bit further there. Don't know.
Am I better back up here, am I? Yeah, there's handles up there, isn't there?
Yeah. That's it, once you've got both feet.
Yep, no problem. It's not good. Well, I'll just stay still and you work yourself round me, yeah?
Yeah. Let me just sort this out. That much. That much.
You want me to go right in, yeah?
Yeah, you go right in there.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, that's
Right.
okay for me, you know?
Yeah, you
Just-
get.
Just you sort yourself out round me.
Just collect all this gear.
Nearby, a small herd of chamois looking for food are startled by the climbers on the waterfall. Ron starts up the second pitch.
I'll do that. Ooh. Few chips coming down, so just watch them.
The angle has eased slightly, but there's a lot of loose snow to clear before he can reach ice hard enough to give his tools something to bite into.
Ooh, don't do that.
One big disadvantage for the second on the rope is that he's constantly bombarded by falling debris.
Got some ice under here.
Ron has laced a sling behind a column of ice to give himself a running belay. The ice screws he's been using as runners would only go in a couple of inches, and were he to come off, would have little holding power. A number of them could perhaps unzip and take some of the shock before his weight came onto his second. The ice column ought to give him a higher margin of security, but he hopes not to have to put it to the test.
You need lots of buckle for this ice climbing gear.
Here, the ice is so insecure that Ron has to balance one foot on the rock wall. But it's difficult to climb rock wearing crampons, so he gets back onto the ice as soon as he can. He's looking for a suitable place to make his second belay, and eventually finds one beneath a hanging mass of ice. Eric, cold and stiff after an hour's wait, is glad to get on the move again.
All right, Eric?
Yeah.
By now, 2 of the 3 pitches of this climb have been completed. But still above the climbers is the steepest section of all, a curtain of fluted ice that hangs completely clear of the rock.
Come out. You okay, Ron?
Yeah, I'm all right, Eric. Keep your head in, yeah?
Yeah. I wouldn't swap places with you.
Bit brittle. I didn't get with any of those, did I?
No, you're right.
Halfway up the 3rd pitch, Ron spots a cave behind a drape of icicles and decides to make for it to take a short rest.
Okay, Eric.
Right.
Just be careful here, because there's some icicles I'll have to knock off. They're in the
Okay,
way a
Ron,
bit.
I'll keep well then.
All right, here they come. Whoa! Bit exposed round here.
Yeah. Feel like coming back, do you?
Whoa. Don't like leaving that cave at all.
Yeah. Think I'll stay here.
Whoa.
The pitch is long and sustained. Ron has now climbed 80 feet above Eric. Feeling very exposed, he will obviously be much happier once he manages to put in another ice screw.
But touch your slacker, Rick.
Okay, mate.
The constant awareness that one axe blow could be all that's needed to reduce the whole climb to an avalanche of ice fragments places a great mental strain on the climbers. The angle eases, and with the end in sight, Ron finds fresh reserves of energy to power up the last few feet.
Okay, Rick, I'm nearly there now.
Right.
Woo! Oh, this is better stuff. Woo-wee. I'm there, Eric! Well done! Wow! What a route! Woo! Okay, Eric, give us some slack.
Climbing rod.
Now, Eric has to climb the last pitch. As second man, he has had a different perspective on the climb. He knew in advance whether a pitch would go or not, so was spared the route finding and decision making. But on the other hand, he knew what a leader's fall could mean to them both, especially on such dubious protection as Ron had managed to secure. It was a terrifying prospect, and one he'd had plenty of time to contemplate during those cold, cramped hours of waiting.
Slack on, yellow, Ron.
You've got it, Eric.
Eric is now only 20 feet from the top. It doesn't take him long before he pulls over the lip to join Ron.
Great stuff. All right. Wow. Wow. What a
Fantastic, Ron.
Great stuff.
With waterfall climbing, there is always the feeling of stealing forbidden fruit. They have to be snatched when conditions are just right. So there is an exhilarating sense of luck, of one-offness, about completing such a climb.
Don't climb many in this condition again or you'll never live to my age.
Good advice. I think I'll stick to that. Every placement you have to hack and hack and hack.
I think I'm getting too old for this game. I mean, it's so strenuous, you know, my arms are dropping off. You know, if you stay here 4 or 5 days and it doesn't go colder, I think it might fall away and you can climb as a rock climb.
Well, it'd be more my style then, wouldn't it?
You can come on your own.
A day later, and there was a slight thaw, and the waterfall was gone.
20 years ago, ascents of the hardest routes in the Alps were becoming commonplace. Even on the Matterhorn, the much-feared north face had been climbed frequently, and the dangers of loose rock and steep ice could be minimized by careful timing. Climbing the north face of the Eiger, the highest wall in Europe, was no longer regarded as a suicide venture. New techniques, new clothing, and a new confidence thrust forward the search for more demanding routes. Of course, the highest mountain in the world continued to attract attention, but the route found by Eric Shipton and climbed by Hilary Ant-Tensing in 1953 turned out to be easy. For rock climbers already pushing the limit of their techniques on vertical walls, little more than an airless plod up easy snow slopes. Mountaineers continued to search for the ultimate challenge, the peak where the easiest way up was as long and as difficult as any wall yet climbed, a peak as beautiful as the Matterhorn, as hard as the Eiger, and where success would earn the acclaim and admiration given to the conquerors of Everest. Surprisingly, it was discovered in Patagonia, at the tip of South America, where even in midsummer, winds rise from 50 to 100 miles an hour within minutes, driving snow and ice particles from the Antarctic to give the worst weather in the world. This beautiful mountain became the stage for dramatic events, and only recent exploration has allowed some of the mystery surrounding it to be penetrated. Only the best mountaineers in the world could take up the challenge, and amongst them was an outstanding Italian rock climber, Cesare Maestri, and Austrian Toni Egger. Within weeks, Toni Egger was dead, and Maestri was found alone at the foot of the peak, claiming to have climbed Cerro Torre, the hardest mountain in the world, in a fantastic time. Had Maestri really climbed it, or was it all a huge hoax? This was an extremely important question, since in the climbing world, mutual trust is vital. In 1959, Maestri was 29 years old, and throughout the 50s had climbed the vertical limestone walls in Italy to achieve a phenomenal reputation and the nickname Spider of the Dolomites. In pushing himself to the highest limits, both mentally and physically, he would do the hardest climbs alone, and then climb back down them. But he was highly ambitious, and in 1958, fame and fortune were to be had by the first man to stand on the summit of Cerro Torre, and Maestri was determined that he should be that man.
My relationship with Cerro Torre began in 1953 when father asked me to try the mountain. But I actually laid hands on Cerro Torre in 1958 when, in the company of Toni Egger and other members of the expedition, we attacked the east face.
The east face rises about 5,000 feet above the glacier, and at first, as Toni Egger was out of action with a boil on his foot, Maestri climbed with father. Unfortunately, Father had lost some frostbitten toes on an expedition to Aconcagua and was not really in the same class as Maestri or Egger. Despite this, progress was good, and after 11 days they had equipped 3 camps leading to the foot of the face and even begun some serious climbing. The lower section turned out to be cut by a groove 1,200 feet high, leading to a small snowfield. The climbing was at a high standard, and the best equipment of the day was used to climb the steep rock: steel pitons and wooden wedges for the wider cracks. Each day the ropes were fixed, so an easy descent could be made to the ice cave at the foot of the face. On the following day, the fixed ropes were ascended to their highest point, and climbing begun again. Time after time, they were beaten back by bad weather. By the end of January, they had equipped a route to the ice field. At this point, a fateful decision was made. Egger was impatient of the slow siege tactics Maestri had been adopting. He wanted an Alpine-style ascent. Enough food for 5 or 6 days, a sleeping bag, as many ropes, pitons and equipment as they could carry, then go like hell for the summit. It was a staggeringly bold plan, and Maestri went along with it. 3 days later, they climbed to the Col of Conquest and up the North Ridge, over 2,000 feet of horrendously steep rock and overhanging ice mushrooms. With no fixed ropes between them and the ice field, they made an incredible descent of the east face in appalling weather, descending from bolt to bolt on overhanging rock. But just as they came within sight of safety, disaster struck. Part of the summit ice cap broke away and, like an express train, shrieked 3,000 feet down the east face. Right in front of Maestri, Egger was carried away to an icy grave in the glacier 1,200 feet below. Shocked and bewildered by the sudden death of Egger, Maestri waited till morning, then made his way down the fixed ropes, slipped on some ice at the foot of the wall, and fell down the snow cone to end stunned and confused on a small ledge on the ice. Of Tony Egger, or the camera with the record of the epic ascent, there was no sign. Father waited patiently at Camp 3, but on the 6th day he was sure there'd been an accident and set out to find help. As he descended, he glanced back. Is that a man or just a crevasse? More out of conscience than hope, he turned back to find Maestri half buried in the snow, alone on the glacier. Maestri recounted the adventures of the previous week and the decisions they had made that led to the accident. Egger's eagerness to be off the mountain, leaving a safe position on the ice field to find the top of their fixed ropes, and exposing himself to the avalanche danger. He talked of the descent of the east face, where each bolt had needed 500 hammer blows to drill a hole in the diamond-hard granite, of the descent of the north ridge, where the wind was so strong they lowered each other down as counterweights over bollards painstakingly cut in the ice. It was not surprising that as the story of the climb filtered back to Europe, Lionel Torre, who had pushed himself to his limit on the first ascent of Fitzroy, considered it the greatest climbing feat of all time. And indeed it was. The ingredients were all there. Constant debilitating winds, poor ice and snow, vertical rock, uncertain weather, and the ever-present threat of avalanches from the summit ice caps. For two men to climb the peak on their first attempt in such elegant style filled the climbing world with admiration. Maestri returned to a hero's welcome in Trento, and the whole town turned out to greet him and his companions. He had led a breakthrough in alpine climbing. He had taken the ultimate risk, and alone he'd survived after immense suffering and endurance. And above all, he was Italian, so they gave him a medal. For the next 10 years, Cerro Torre was left alone. But as harder walls were climbed, Maestri's route looked even more impossible. It was inconceivable that he would lie about getting to the summit. Every climber wanted to believe him, and one of these was Jim Donini, a well-known American climber.
I spent the first 6 years of my climbing career in Yosemite Valley in California, and Yosemite is characterized by very steep vertical granite walls up to 3,000 feet high. And some of the biggest developments in big wall climbing in the world have been made in Yosemite in recent years. So it was a different thing for me going to Patagonia and finding myself confronted with vertical granite walls fully as steep as those I found in Yosemite, but with the added problems of bad weather, ice, objective dangers from ice mushrooms, possible avalanches, problems that took it completely out of the scale of Yosemite Valley. I was one of those who believed in Maestri. I took him at his word. I believed in Maestri and Egger climbed Cerro Torre. Now, Maestri has an enviable climbing record. At one time, he was doing the most difficult ascents in the Dolomites, and he was doing them in the best style possible, solo, up, solo down. And, incredible climber. When somebody like Cesare Maestri says that they've climbed at that time, the most difficult mountain in the world, you believe him.
But not everyone did, and it seemed possible that Cerro Torre was a virgin peak, where there was still a reputation to be made. In 1968, a strong British party with Dougal Haston and Mick Burke, both who were to climb Everest a few years later, tried the easiest-looking ridge, avoiding many of the objective dangers of falling ice that made Maestri's route so unappealing. Despite all their training on the hardest climbs and using the best equipment available, bad weather and the difficult rock and ice pitches beat them back, and they were never to return. 2 other expeditions tried the same ridge, but again, failure. By now, questions were being made openly, and when another Italian expedition failed to climb the ice-covered west face in conditions they assumed to be similar to those encountered by Maestri and Egger, disbelief was rampant. Maestri, with typical offhand modesty, replied that, for all he knew, there may be no one else in the world capable of climbing Cerro Torre.
So the controversy broke, and I think a lot of it, my line of thinking, was because people went down there years later with more modern equipment, stronger teams maybe, and they couldn't repeat that sort of thing. They couldn't imagine how Maestri and Egger could have in 1959, given the fact there were only 2 of them, given the fact that they said, Maestri said they only did it in 6 days with this older equipment, heavier equipment. They couldn't believe that 2 people could possibly have done that. But then again, isn't that what climbing's all about? To do things, to push your limits, to do harder and harder things. And maybe it is possible that 2 people against all odds, 2 generations ago, were able to do something that at that time was considered impossible. I mean, everything is within the realm of possibility as far as I can see it.
After our victory in 1959, the Italians and Spanish raised doubts that we had reached the summit. So I returned to repeat the ascent.
At first, Maestri said he was going to climb Cerro Torre's satellite, Torre Egger, named in memory of Tony Egger. But as soon as he arrived, his real objective was revealed. The southwestern arête of Cerro Torre, the ridge that had already beaten 3 other expeditions. It seemed the easiest of the 3 ridges, but a close look revealed how deceptive this was. It was so narrow, there were few alternative lines. It was cloaked with snow and ice and fully exposed to the raging winds. The British party had failed some 2,000 feet above the col, below the overhanging ice cornices that are such a major obstacle high on Cerro Torre. No one had set foot on the intimidating 700-foot-high head wall, nor the forbidding snow mushrooms on the summit. This time there was to be no failures. Maestri helicoptered in a strong team with a wooden hut to give solid protection at base camp against the formidable weather. For in typical Maestri fashion, he was to try a route that had resisted all attempts in summer, right in the middle of winter. Soon the hut was well buried, but inside it provided a warmer environment than the ice caves most of the other expeditions had slept in, and they used the ice cave as a large deep freeze. But despite their special boots lined with Australian opossum, they found conditions on the face debilitating, with temperatures falling to 25 degrees centigrade below zero, winds never less than 30 miles an hour, and gusting to almost 100. Out of 54 consecutive days they worked on the wall, 28 were spent in hanging bivouacs. One reason for the slow progress was that they were winching up the face, a weapon never before used by man in his assaults on the mountains. 300 weight of petrol, oil, winches, ropes, and a motor compressor to drive a pneumatic drill.
I took a compressor with me because I calculated I might have to hammer in up to 1,000 bolts. Of course, this would have been an endless process by normal means.
After 8 weeks of effort, the last 2 living in traditional Italian fashion on spaghetti flavored with olive oil, they failed, 1,300 feet below the summit. The pneumatic drill broken and further progress impossible. But Maestri was not beaten. After 5 months spent in the Argentine, he returned in summer with a new motor for the compressor. Within 10 days, they reached their previous high point, dug the equipment out of the ice, fitted the new motor, and drilled on. They penetrated the overhanging ice below the head wall, then working from 4 in the morning till 11 at night, drilled their way up the final defenses of Cerro Torre. Altogether, they had drilled holes and bolted their way up 1,200 feet of virgin rock. But despite all their labors, they didn't quite make it. As they struggled up the last icy wall, they came face to face with Cerro Torre's ultimate problem, the 150-foot-high summit mushroom. Maestri said, "It's just a lump of ice, not really part of the mountain. It'll blow away one of these days." So they took one look at the overhanging ice, dumped their machinery, and went back down. "Cerro Torre, a mountain desecrated," screamed Mountain Magazine, summing up the whole paradox. How could Maestri, a man who claimed to have ascended one of the world's hardest mountains, in perhaps the boldest and finest climb of all time, think of returning to make a second ascent by means of such despicable tactics, thus befouling and polluting the whole aura surrounding the peak?
I believe in absolute liberty, that we should walk in our own particular circle, and that our own circle should not impose upon others.
But climbers were not to be shrugged off. The questions were still open. What really did happen in 1959? Did they get to the top or not? After 11 expeditions, only Cesare Maestri claimed to have been to the summit of Cerro Torre. Could it be, as he suggested, that there was no one else in the world good enough to do it? In 1974, Casimiro Ferrari took up the challenge with a team from Lecco. This time, there was to be no pneumatic drills, only normal climbing equipment, and perhaps a priest as the only piece of artificial aid. From the east, it's only a few hours' walk to the foot of the mountain, but from the west, it's 37 miles, the last part across the Patagonian ice cap. Ferrari planned to tow supplies across on sledges made from skis. There were no Sherpas in Patagonia to carry loads, cook food, and put up tents. If you didn't want to carry it yourself, you simply left it behind. Although the approach march was longer, the west face was the shortest face on the mountain, and completely covered with snow. 2 previous expeditions from Italy had been driven back by prolonged storms, but there was always a chance, if luck held out and snow conditions were good, of making a very rapid ascent to the summit. After all, Maestri and Egger had done it in 6 days up and down in 1959, when the rocks were thick with ice, so why shouldn't Ferrari? After a month, they'd fully stocked their base camps at over 5,000 feet and could look up towards the summit, which seemed tantalizingly near. Their route was to lead to the Col of Hope, named by Mauri in 1958. When Maestri heard this, he named the col on his side of the mountain Col of Conquest, explaining, "There's no such thing as hope, only the will to conquer. Hope is the weapon of the poor." They were determined to succeed. After all, they were the much-admired Lecco spiders, who had slipped into obscurity, and a good, clean ascent of Cerro Torre would give them back the prestige they once had. This was to be a team effort, not some stunt to promote an individual climber or a pneumatic drill manufacturer. At first, the climbing was much as they expected, up steep, solid ice, and progress was excellent. Within 3 days, they had established a camp within 1,500 feet of the summit. Then, as so often happens in Patagonia, the weather changed. It was debatable which was the most unpleasant job, carrying loads up and down the fixed ropes in foul conditions, or sitting cold, bored and hungry in a flapping tent, waiting for conditions to improve so that the route could be pushed forward. They were determined not to be driven back to base camp, and ferried supplies to keep 3 or 4 climbers at the top camp, just in case there was a favourable break in the weather. Even the easy ground near base camp could be made dangerous by deep new snow. At first, they took the delays philosophically, but as base camp became a squalid, cold outpost, continuously battered by gale force winds, they tried to fend off the discomfort by endless sing-songs. It was 3 weeks before the storm blew itself out, and the team could set out in force to resupply the climbers at their highest camp. A bit of blue sky, a drop in the wind, and spirits soared. But already, as supplies diminished, most of the team realized that they could only put 3 or 4 men on the summit, and the rest would have to sacrifice their ambitions for the success of the whole expedition. They knew the blizzard had covered the whole mountain in deep, fresh snow that could, at best, make progress slow and laborious, and at worst, slice off the mountain face, carrying them with it. Was there ever such a mountain as this? What luck Maestri and Egger must have had to find conditions which enabled them to do it so quickly, when it seemed they had to fight for each single step forward. But once again the barometer fell, and the storm returned. For another week they were locked in their tiny camp, watching their meagre supplies run out day by day. With 1 day's supplies left, either the weather improved or the expedition was over, with only a few feet gained over the last 2 failures. Keeping the fixed ropes clear was monotonous, but if there was an improvement, they would have no more than 1 day to reach the summit. Then on the fateful 13th, the weather improved. Ferrari with 3 companions strapped on their crampons and started out for the summit. Conditions weren't perfect, but this was to be their last chance. The weather was far from good, and 1 minute they could see the summit, and the next it disappeared in swirling clouds driven by the violent wind. Route finding was desperate, and the climbing varying from steep, soft snow that would hardly hold a climber's weight to overhanging ice that required all the techniques of artificial climbing. Still, Cerro Torre had a sting in its tail, the final summit mushroom that Maestri had failed to climb 4 years previously. Overhanging precarious ice barred the route, and the last thing they wanted was a long traverse just below the summit. But there was no other way. 3 long traversing pitches, then a final pull on their ice axes driven deep into the soft snow, and they were on top. At last, Cerro Torre had indisputably been climbed, right to the flat, spacious summit. They left a replica of the Lecco spider, took photographs in the thick swirling mists, and 3 days later were reunited with the rest of the expedition. It had been a bold climb in dangerous conditions, pushed relentlessly through weeks of continuous snowstorms. They had every reason to feel proud that at last they had solved the problem of how to climb Cerro Torre. Did their ascent prove that there should be no lingering doubts about Maestri's story? If the snow conditions were right, and with Egger's known daring, speed and skill, perhaps it was possible. But the proof lay in Egger's camera, buried deep in the huge glacier at the foot of the tower. Over 15 years ago, his body had disappeared in a crevasse, in millions of tons of ice that was remorselessly sliding downhill, slowly churning its contents like a giant reptile digesting its prey.
When we were in Patagonia before the Torre Egger climb, my first season down there, we tried to do an alpine ascent of Egger's neighbor, Cerro Stanhart. We were unsuccessful, but we learned a lot about conditions which ultimately led to our success on Torre Egger. Coming down from one of our unsuccessful attempts, coming down the steep glaciers that come from the base of the mountains down to the Torre Cirque, the very flat glacier on the bottom of the Cirque. Mick Coffey, an English climber, was with our party at that time, and he was about 50 yards ahead. And we were coming down a way which we normally we didn't take. And he discovered some things on the ice. Just where the steep glacier came down and leveled out into the flat glacier below, he discovered these remains. Called us over, and we found that they were the remains of Tony Egger. Now, Tony was killed 15 years ago. And in that time, he had come about 1.5 miles down glacier and then melted out. What we found were just a boot here, a boot there, the rope. We found the rope that he'd been on when he'd been abseiling on when the ice avalanche hit him. We found his ice axe. We found various things. We didn't find the camera that was, according to Maestri, was with Tony at that time. But then again, there were a lot of things we didn't find. There could be no doubt that it's Tony's body because of its position and the equipment, the boots made in Kitzbühel and everything else, the equipment, and all along with the fact that he's the only person that's been killed in that specific area. So there's no doubt that it was Tony Egger's body. So the body, no camera. The camera may still be under a few meters of ice, if it does exist at all. Tony's remains had been in that spot for 15 years, and we felt that it was a good resting place for a climber. So we left his body there, but we did take a carabiner, which had been close by. He had been using as an abseil when he was killed. And subsequently, the next year when we climbed Torre Egger, which is a peak adjacent to Cerro Torre and had been named after Tony, we left the carabiner on the summit. Which is, in fact, the only thing we did leave on the summit.
But in 1976, Donini was to make discoveries that once again filled the climbing world with controversy.
To me, a lot of climbing is history. A lot of the appeal of climbing Torre Egger by way of the Cold Conquest was in the fact that we would be repeating 3,000 feet of climbing that was done in 1959 by Tony Egger and Cesare Maestri. We decided to try and climb Torre Egger, a very difficult rock spire to the right of Cerro Torre. And from first looking at it, we thought, well, it's possible. We'll go up and see. And the climbing was incredibly difficult. I expected more in line with mountaineering, more of a mixed type of ground, a hard pitch, an easier pitch. a little bit of snow, a little bit of rock. It turned out, in fact, to be very, very continuous. A lot of it of the nature of big wall climbing in Yosemite. There were a number of hanging belays, a number of difficult nailing pitches, artificial aid. It was a climb on a big, scary mountain. Also, too, ice climbing. So that just doing the first 3,000 feet to the Col of Conquest was, for me, more difficult than any of the routes I'd done on El Capitan in Yosemite. It was very, very interesting. I remember in the first 700 or 800 feet and finding all sorts of remains of their route. Little shards of rope hanging from wafer pitons and wooden wedges. I hadn't seen wooden wedges before. In Yosemite, we had all the modern gear. And I know that the Alps are studded with wooden wedges, and the Dolomites are studded with wooden wedges. So for me, it was very interesting to find a wooden wedge, to find two, to find 10 in a row. They left a lot of equipment behind. Pitons, wedges, ropes, you name it, it was there. And so we were following history as we climbed the first 1,000 feet. Also, it helped us find the correct way. They had done the route finding for us, essentially. We got very close to a large, very prominent terrain feature on Cerro Torre, a triangular snowfield about 1,000 feet up. And on one particular day, with high cirrus moving in and a possibility of a storm coming in the next day, we thought that we could push a few pitches through and get up to the snowfield that day. And I remember belaying John Bragg, and here I was in a hanging position on a vertical granite wall, and John did a difficult A traverse and then climbed up a beautiful runnel of ice. From there, it was another easier ice pitch, and then it was my lead, and I moved back left and found a 100-foot aid pitch, bristling with gear left behind by Maestri and Egger. For 100 feet, every piton was fixed, about every 3.5 or 4 feet. And in every piton, there was a carabiner. Very, very puzzling. I couldn't figure that out. And then through the carabiners went a rope, and the rope was clove hitched or tied to about every other carabiner. This pitch ended on a very small sloping ledge, about 50 feet below the snowfield. And on this ledge, we found a pack with old wooden wedges and pitons and 3 or 4 ropes next to the pack. It was an obvious equipment dump. So we had this fixed pitch, and then the equipment dump. And above that, a 50-foot overhanging blank wall, and then the snowfield. And then from there, the Col of Conquest itself was 2,000 feet of what we found to be very sustained, and very difficult, and very enjoyable climbing. And we found nothing else. No pitons, no shards of rope, no wooden wedges, no boot prints on the snow, nothing at all. The only, no further evidences of previous passage from 1959. Well, then you say, well, maybe they went a different way. Well, it is possible. From the snowfield, there were 2 obvious lines. One was up a very steep ice gully, and the other one was onto beautiful crack systems to the right of the ice gully on a nice buttress. We were thinking about the ice gully. We got to it, and it was rampaging avalanche chute. Incredibly dangerous. And just to cross the ice gully to get over to the rock buttress was a very scary proposition. But that's the way we had to go. So we crossed the ice gully, went up these beautiful crack systems, for 1,000 feet, and then back left into the ice, and then back right. Very difficult, fun climbing. If it weren't for the fact of the ice mushrooms of 3,000 feet above you in Cerro Torre just looming there waiting to drop, it would have been an incredible experience. And after 1,500 feet of climbing, very difficult, very sustained climbing, we came to what we thought from below would be a problem. We didn't know exactly how they traversed into the coal. Now, we knew that Maestri and Egger had been there in 59, so they obviously had done it, but from below, it looked unreasonable. You couldn't see anything. Well, we peeked around this corner, and lo and behold, something hidden from below, a nice ramp that gave us comparatively easy access to the Col of Conquest. We found nothing there either. No rappel anchors, no abseil anchors, no fixed pitons left behind, nothing at all. You know, it's too bad because the only positive evidence you could find would be a piton. If you found a piton, then you would know that, okay, they got to this point. Without a shadow of a doubt, they got this far. The fact that we didn't find any pitons doesn't mean conclusively that they didn't get to that point. It's very suspicious. In my eyes, it's very damning, but it's not conclusive.
Their climb was a magnificent achievement, 4,000 feet of extremely difficult climbing. But Torre looks quite unimpressive against its majestic neighbour, Cerro Torre, almost twice as high above the Col of Conquest. And Maestri had climbed that in the same time as they took to climb half the distance. It just didn't seem credible.
The climb to the Col of Conquest took much longer than expected. Even though we did it in bits and pieces, going up and then getting stormed off and then going back up, the total climbing time of actual climbing on the Col to get to the Col was about 6 days.
Our progress was helped by exceptionally good conditions, and we climbed by ordinary ice techniques. But remember, Cerro Torre is very close to the Antarctic. The condition of the ice is unique. It's unstable and very dangerous. Tony Egger was an exceptional ice climber, and thanks to his brilliant technique, we dealt with all the difficulties very quickly.
We were pushing things fairly hard, and I just don't feel that the Europeans were climbing any faster than we could have climbed it. They could have done the climbing. They could have done the climbing. They might have used a little bit of more artificial than we did. Or maybe they wouldn't. You never know. But I don't see a very fast, a much faster ascent being made to the Col of Conquest than we did. A lot of people have asked me who I feel made the first ascent of Cerro Torre. Was it Maestri in 1959, or was it Casimiro Ferrari in 1974? Given the spirit of mountaineering, one would like to give Maestri the benefit of the doubt. But after having repeated 2,000, 3,000 feet of Maestri's route, I personally have grave reservations.
Few climbers who stand on the summit of a peak for the first time have been asked to prove it. Their word was sufficient. Indeed, proof was often difficult, even impossible. The summit shrouded in cloud, feet of snow and ice burying any small mark they had left. It was a matter of mutual trust between climbers, and that trust seemed to have been broken. If Maestri had climbed it, why go back to do it by another route, and with such a flagrant breach of climbing ethics? A British party recently trying to repeat Maestri's route found a line of bolts next to a perfectly climbable crack, and at resting points so many bolts that they looked as if they had been put in with a machine gun. But eventually they were forced to pull up on the bolts, and disheartened, they retreated, well before the last few feet, where Maestri had chopped his bolts away. An unpleasant surprise for any ill-informed leader. In 1977, John Bragg, who had climbed Torre with Danini, repeated Ferrari's ice route on the west face in pure alpine style, using no siege tactics, and a mountain despoiled is beginning to hold up its head again. As long as people are climbing, the challenge of Cerro Torre is there, and the mystery of its early history will always fascinate them.
I really wish I didn't have any doubts about the climb. But, it was a fluke that we found Egger's body. We didn't find the camera, and I suppose 50 years from now it's possible it will be found, and until it is, we'll never know. We'll never really know.